Hey everybody, it's Jay Wanacott again. It's nice to see you all again and reach out to you. I've been doing a series of videos to help people who are in Catholic family life deal with everything that's going on around the COVID-19 pandemic that we're experiencing. It's a pleasure today to have us be joined by Jodi Fulford. Jodi is someone I work with closely through the diocese. She helps lead our parenting course. And Jodi, it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, Jay.
Hey, Jodi, I just wanted to check in and have you share with our listeners kind of first off, how has this whole thing impacted your own family life? What kinds of adjustments have you made? What's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, we're all home, of course. My husband actually is still working because he works for an essential business. He does IT for the power company, so he actually has been working late nights. So I've essentially been single parenting, and we have an only child. So with her being home by herself, I'm her only entertainment and interaction.
Yeah.
And she's an extrovert and she's already sick of me. But she's just started school this week. And so I'm trying to help her do that as well as working at home. So yeah, it's been interesting, but we've been having some nice family times as well. And I have to kind of force her to get off the computer and go outside and go for walks and do some other things in between schoolwork. But we're doing okay. We're hanging in there, and praying for everybody else that's out there on the front lines.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, one of the great things that we've been able to do this last year is something called a Catholic Connected Parenting Course. And you have been the primary teacher for that program, utilizing something called TBRI. And I'm going to have you explain that to everybody about what that is. But maybe you could share a little bit about that course. Our course got impacted, of course, this spring. We were hoping to offer it. We are hoping to offer it in the fall. But what I'd really like to hear is from you about what is TBRI and what would be the advantage of someone taking this class?
yeah, so TBRI stands for Trust-Based Relational Intervention. And it's a theory that came out of Texas Christian University. Dr. Karen Purvis and David Cross created this, and it was designed specifically for families who have children who have been through trauma. So any kind of, neglect or abuse, adopted children, but we're using it here in the diocese to generalize to a broader audience. And so it really does work for every family. I mean, whether you have significant issues in your family or not, it's really helpful. And in counseling world, we define big T trauma versus little t trauma. And so the big T trauma everybody knows of are things like abuse and neglect, natural disasters, wars, those sorts of things. But little t traumas are, things like divorce or medical issues in the family, substance abuse, things like that. And really, you can think about right now, we're all kind of going through a collective trauma. Because we're all kind of going through a little t trauma, some big T trauma, those who have lost family members and things. And so this class is really helpful for helping children to heal, parents as well, to look at their own attachment relationships that they've had growing up and how it applies to their parenting today. And it's really about connection. A lot of times we look at trauma and how can we heal the trauma? Well, we heal it through relationships. And so our class focuses on connection and attachment, and how to improve those with our children, and how to look at our own history as well. And the best thing we can do for our children is to improve ourselves, to make ourselves a better parent, to look at our own issues in our own past as well. So that's all kind of wrapped up in these classes. And then we have, of course, the Catholic connection piece of it. So we're doing it from a Catholic perspective. And so I think it's been really helpful. When we do the classes in person, we have the adults in one room, the parents learning the concepts, and then we have the children in another room, and they're learning the same concepts that the parents are learning, but they're learning it through play, activities, movement, that sort of thing. And then we bring them together for an activity together to give them an opportunity to interact and practice some of the skills. So Now we're not able to do it this spring, but we're hoping to do that again in the fall. And it's been helpful to do them at schools where we have a gymnasium and the kids can do large group activities and smaller group activities as well.
Yeah, I think it's pretty awesome. My experience of it and our opportunity last year to experience really two sets of courses. We did the first week, we did the first series in 6 weeks, but we saw the need to add actually a couple of weeks. So it's an 8-week commitment. And it is a commitment for families who are really trying to do this important work of, as you said, trying to connect or learn a bunch of skills or some skills that they can take back and work on that connection versus correction. And I think both are important, of course, but a lot of parenting sometimes ends up with the first. We end up correcting versus connecting, and I think that's a really important lesson of the TBR material and what you are able to provide and show the parents. And they do, I think, a lot of them work through a lot of their own attachment questions, and it is a great course for the parents um, to be bringing this stuff back and over several weeks practicing it in their homes, because we are doing that dual track, if you will, of having the whole family have this experience. And I think that's been a really fruitful thing that's been part of this whole experience and process. So I think if people are interested, you can always check this out at catholicidaho.org. You go to the Marriage and Family Life webpage, and we actually have up that link if you're interested in signing up or taking a look at signing up for that course in the fall. We have not determined those dates yet. Everything is sort of up in the air yet, but I think it's a really important opportunity for us to be providing this service to our community, because it is such, I think, a very powerful program, and the feedback that we've gotten has been very, I think, very, very positive. The families, the couples, the children who go through, I think, are greatly impacted. Um, Kind of with that, I want to have you share, if you would. You talked about that big T, little t trauma dynamic and the impact that that can have on our ability to connect and to communicate with our children. And when we're put in situations where the family is under stress, particularly a lot of folks now, again, are dealing with working at home if they can. The schools have been, basically closed. The churches have been basically closed. And one of the things I've been talking about is the value of us reclaiming this concept of the domestic church, the church of the home, and how a lot of things are happening here now. But we're not robots, and we all have emotions. We all have feelings. I know in my own family, we have lots of high energy and emotion around everything that's going on, lots of changes that are happening because school's out, and there's just some dynamics of trying to school at home. But there's not always an easy way around some of those emotions, and we have to work through them. So I'm hoping you could share with those parents listening, and maybe the kids too, some insights, some helps, if you will, as we help deal with how we are dealing with our emotions and how we're expressing that in our homes, to create an opportunity to have a healthy expression of that, because I know sometimes that can become very unhealthy and people can boil over and emotions can happen. And we talk a lot about the flipping of the lid. When people emotionally are dealing with something, there's parts of the brain that respond to different kinds of emotional things happening, and we don't oftentimes think as well when those emotional parts of our brain kind of take over. So I want to give the floor to you and have you share some of those insights, but also share some advice and some direction for parents who are maybe needing some help to regulate their own emotions and maybe help their kids regulate better.
Right. So with the children, we talk to them about we use the hand. We say this is your brain, and down here in the bottom is the amygdala, and that's the part of your brain that flips into the fight, flight, or freeze mode when you're under stress and anxiety. And the top part of the brain is the prefrontal cortex, and this is the part that makes all the wise decisions. And when we say flipping your lid, we're referring to the fact that at certain times when we go into stress or anxiety, we flip our lid and this prefrontal cortex is gone. And we're operating out of this bottom part of our brain. And we want to do some things to help bring that prefrontal cortex back so that we can make wise decisions. And children, a lot of times, if they've been through trauma or other situations, they may flip into this flipping your lid when you think, they're completely safe. There's nothing wrong, but in their minds, they do not feel safe. So we talk about felt safety. Do they feel safe? And one way to do that, we talk a lot about in the class about self-regulation. And self-regulation in our definition is the ability to calm yourself by yourself. And so we teach the kids a lot of different regulation things that they can do. So if we can recognize in ourselves and in our children when they're about to flip their lid and stop it, and help them to regulate, then they won't get to that point. And so some of the things that we teach the children for self-regulation is pressure points. So with the kids, we teach magic mustache. And that's just putting your finger on your top lip here and pushing down and holding for a few seconds. There are other places in the body, if you're dealing with teenagers or older children, they won't want to talk about magic mustache. You can just talk about pressure points, over the eyebrows. If you think about when you're under stress, what do people do? They kind of do this kind of thing, or, if they're really thinking, there's certain areas that they might push on. So pressure points, breathing, of course, deep breathing. We do a soup bowl experience with the kids where we have them hold their bowl of soup and they breathe in the smell of the soup. And then they blow on the soup real slowly, because if they blow real fast, then the soup goes everywhere. And so they blow real slowly on the soup. Bubbles is a really good thing to do as well for breathing, because you have to blow really slowly with bubbles. So you can have them go outside and blow bubbles. The other thing is, people have probably heard about progressive muscle relaxation, where you tighten a specific muscle and you hold it for a few seconds and then you relax it. And we do some things similar to that, where you can have the child go and push on a wall and push it really hard and say, oh, try to push this down. And they, to the count of 10, and then they stop and they relax and they do it again. It's kind of the same concept as the progressive muscle relaxation. Or we'll have them do where they hold on to their chair and they push themselves up in the chair and hold till 10 and then relax. And so those are just some ideas of ways to help self-regulate ourselves. But the other thing that I think is really important for families to remember is play. And as our children get older, we forget to play. We lose that ability. And play is the thing for children that disarms fear, and it helps them to know that they're safe. And so if we're dealing with a situation, we're trying to teach them something, if we can do it through play, they're going to learn it a lot faster than if we were lecturing to them or yelling at them. If we can do it playfully, where if a child mouths off to me and I say, hey, wait a minute, let's try that again with a little respect, or let's try that a little nicer. That's a more playful way of teaching them and stopping it before it turns into as Karen says, put out the spark before it turns into a forest fire. And so if we can do things through play, we need to try and stop schooling and things at different intervals. I think throughout the day, I have to remind my daughter of this all day long. Okay, let's take a break. Let's go outside and do something fun, or let's, we have a Wii, so maybe she gets on the Wii and plays, or we do Just Dance and we have a dance party, or, something like that. And I think as parents, we kind of forget to play and we lose that ability. And so that helps our anxiety as well, is to be able to take time and play with our kids. And so I think that's really important in the middle of our crazy days these days.
Yeah, you had mentioned the name Karen. I think you were referring to Karen Purvis. Karen
Yes.
Purvis is the founder of this TBRI model. Is that correct?
Yes. Sorry.
Good. No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure people knew who she was. And if you want to look her up, there's a lot of great information on the internet. You would just type in Karen Purvis, TBRI, and you can learn more about her and what she's done with this particular program.
The other thing I wanted to mention is connection. Our parenting class is all about connection. And I think in this time of stress, where we're all locked in the house together, that we need to remember just little things of connection. Maybe we start out the day with a family hug and a prayer, or it's the the chin prompts, where we put our hand on their chin or their shoulder, even our spouse, to remember that we need to have healthy touch throughout the day. And so if we're going from, I know with my daughter, she's in middle school, and it's one subject to the next. They have these live classes, and then she has homework to do in between. And if I get in the mode of do this, that now do this, now do this, I need to stop and make sure I'm connecting with her. And so that's our goal before any kind of correction, is connection. And it can be little things like eye contact, you know, putting your hands, having them put their hands on your hands and look them in the eye and have a conversation with them, you know, hugs. That people are, I think a lot of parents are getting really stressed out about having their kids schooling at home and having to make sure that they're doing well in their classes. And I think that people are going to be getting a lot of leeway in these days. I think teachers and bosses are going to be giving people a lot of leeway. And if you have to prioritize between doing something for work and connecting with your child, I would recommend connecting with your child. So
Yeah, I think one of the, you're bringing it up, I think it's a great point, is kind of the stress that the parents may be feeling right now, because they're maybe used to just, I work my 9 to 5 job and then I see my kids in the evening and they have gone to school during the day, and now we're asked to juggle 2 or 3 different responsibilities throughout the day. So this kind of this balancing act that has to happen that we're maybe a lot of people are not used to. And I think that can be very challenging, particularly for parents. Can you speak to that question of self-care a little bit, particularly for parents? Because I think in modeling these behaviors, parents sometimes we're not perfect. We lose it sometimes. We don't do the right thing. And you know, I think one of the things that you have taught too is the need for even parents to get down on the child's level to and change the inflection of your voice. And sometimes that takes a lot of intentional work. It takes a lot of, like, I got to be in that place, as opposed to just yelling at my child and saying, you know, come here, do this, do that, because we got a lot to get done, and so we're already stressed. So that making that connective point is one that's really well said. I think part of it is that we don't do this, maybe the self-care on the opposite side of that, to make that possible. What are we doing to, like you mentioned, going to incorporate play, or going for that walk, or taking the break to realize maybe we can't be as productive as we normally are, because how we define that. But I think there are some ways in which we have to do some of that self-care to make sure our tank is filled, so we can help fill the tanks of our children. Can you speak to that at all? Because I think that's an important point of self-care for parents in particular.
sure, yeah. I noticed with my daughter, when she would come home from school, and I would start getting on her right away about doing chores or other homework or whatever. I noticed that a lot of times I got a fight on my hands. And so I realized that I just needed to have a point of connection with her. And I just had to stop and sit down and say, you know what, how was your day? Before we launch into everything else. And I think adults need the same thing. And so, there may be times throughout the day that the parent just needs to stop and maybe call a friend, maybe go outside for a walk. If the kids are old enough to stay alone for 15 minutes, they can go for a walk by themselves and come back, take a bath, do some gardening, whatever it is, that listen to some music, whatever it is that helps them to kind of regenerate for themselves so that they can get back into it. It's that moment of connection. Or if the person is an introvert like me, sometimes it's hard to have people around all the time. And so maybe I just need to go in my room and read a book for 15, 20 minutes, and then come back and be ready. So I think whatever gets us full of energy again, whatever energizes us, is what we need to make sure we're stopping to do throughout the day. And maybe they could set a timer on their phone, every couple hours, that it goes off and says, I need to do something for myself. I need to go outside. I need to take a break. I need to call a friend, video chat, maybe have a coffee date on the video chat or something.
Yeah, for those extroverts who need to see other
Yeah,
people. Yeah, that's
right.
good. Yeah, that's good.
And getting our feelings, expressing our feelings in healthy ways is really important. And so whether that's talking to somebody or journaling, we write about it. A lot of times just getting it out of our head and onto paper helps us to let go of it and relax, or, say a prayer. For kids, it can be things like if they're feeling angry or anxious, going outside and throwing a ball, or coloring real hard on a piece of paper, ripping up paper, squeezing, kind of ball kind of things, even crying. A lot of times, sometimes you just need to watch a sad movie and let out the tears, because that releases the tension and the anxiety that you've been holding on. So just healthy ways of expressing our feelings, I think, is really, really important in this time and age.
Well, that's awesome. Jodi, would you lead us in a prayer? We're going to close up our session now, and I just want to thank you for your opportunity to join me via Zoom here, and hopefully we get this out to people and they can get some of this great advice and be thinking about how they're incorporating that into their own family lives. Would you lead us in prayer?
Sure. Right before I do that, though, I wanted to mention that we have a Facebook page that typically in the past we've just had families who have gone through the classes. But if people are interested in learning more about TBRI, I have videos from different things posted on that page. And I've been sharing things on that page to help people, different resources, books, and things like that they can use in their parenting. And it's just called Catholic Connected Parenting. And if they want to search for it on Facebook, I can accept them. I have to approve them to be added. But if they want to hear more about this and just kind of keep up to date, they can ask questions there about TBRI and that sort of thing as well.
Awesome. Jodi, thank you. Check that out. Check it out on Facebook, Catholic Connected Parenting, and just type that in the search bar and it should come up. And thank you for offering that.
Sure.
Would you lead us in prayer?
Sure. Dear Lord, I thank you for this time that you've given us today, and for all these parents that are working so hard at home to teach their children, to do their work, and to be better parents. And Lord, we just ask that you give us all patience and strength to get through these days, that you help us to express our feelings in healthy ways and take time for ourselves and allow ourselves to have some grace during this time. Help our families to become stronger and to build up the domestic church during this difficult time. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jodi. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for spending some time sharing your expertise with us. God bless you.
Sure. Yes, it's my pleasure. Take care.
Bye.